Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Project. I'm your host, Steve Fieros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today we have John on the show. John is a short-term rental industry expert with particular expertise in optimizing and customizing the technology stack, driving up revenue. He's got some stuff we're going to talk about a little bit later on that. Continually streamlining operations. So systems guy for sure, but he likes to leverage his experience in building, growing, operating successful short-term rentals from the ground up. So he's utilizing his own short-term rental business as a testing ground to roll up, his sleeves, dig in, experiment with new systems, technologies, different approaches. John is actually an architect by training. He's got a doctorate in building physics from Harvard. Pretty cool. I actually didn't know that, John, which is really awesome. And so he's in a former life. Yeah, he's an expert consultant in the environmental sustainability industry, but has shifted gears now into short-term rentals, and that's his focus now as a second career. He's passionate about and dedicated to helping and professionalizing the industry. So, John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on your show. We've spoken before kind of casually, but it's awesome to be on the show and, have a chat about what I do and what you do.
Yeah, no, super excited to have you on. Obviously we've met in person, and I know that's beginning to be a little bit more of a rarity. Hopefully that becomes a little bit more of the norm again. But the cool thing is we're across the country from each other. I'm obviously in Hawaii out here. John, where are you at right now? Because John has property out here in Hawaii too, so he has visited from time to time. But where are you currently located?
Yeah, so I spend about 50% of my time in Hawaii, and then 50% of my time on the mainland, typically in New Jersey. So it's about 5,000 miles away. But it works for me, so that's the way I like it.
Oh, that's awesome. And I always like to point that out too, because people always I feel like this is a kind of a limiting mindset at times. People always feel like they've got to invest in their backyard, and if they're people are very hesitant and have been reluctant, I think, to go outside of what they feel comfortable with. And so John's picture perfect example of you don't have to invest in your backyard. He's obviously spending a lot of time out here now, but 5,000 miles away. So if he can do it, and I know we do it too, that should give hope to you guys out there that are thinking, gosh, it's so expensive here. How do I invest in here? Well, you don't have to. You can go to a different market as well. Right. So yeah, John, just to kind of give, for those of our audience that may not be familiar with you, tell us a little bit about yourself, just, how you got started in your journey into, to real estate investing.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, I'm an architect by training, and I used to be in the consulting world on sustainable buildings. And so I had worked on, a range of, world-class buildings across the country and across the world. And through that experience, I worked with some amazing developers, people who always made like the highest end decisions during meetings to build, beautiful properties that would add value to the owners and buyers. And so I wanted to grow up and become a developer. And so that's kind of where I got my journey started in going out on my own and doing some development work here in New Jersey. I built some ground up new construction houses out here. And as you know, during development work, cash is always flowing out. It's not flowing in until you sell. And so in the middle of one of my projects out here, I was on vacation out in Hawaii, and I'd been out to Hawaii, multiple times before. So I was very comfortable and familiar with the market. And I just had this idea, hey, let's just pick up a small property. Let's, even if it brings in a couple hundred or maybe $1,000 a month, let's just start getting some cash flow into my business while I do my development work. Well, lo and behold, the cash flow was much stronger than I had initially anticipated. So I started diving into that more. But I couldn't find competent management, right? Like everyone I tried to work with promised the world and delivered nothing. And so little by little, I started, taking over bits and pieces of the management just because I couldn't find good people. And one of the benefits of being 5,000 miles away from from my investment property is that you've got to build solid systems, right? Like if something falls apart, you can't just say, oh, you know what, I'm going to take 15 minutes and go there and take care of it myself, right? So from day one, I had to think about systems and operations and how to make sure that things go smoothly. And so that's how I got into the short-term rental world. And I've been loving it and just kind of expanding my sphere in this industry. And yeah, so that's how I got into this. It's a long way of saying I just, kind of fell into it. But as far as cash flow goes, it's, I think, one of the best asset classes out there.
It's like, as so many stories start, right? It's like, well, I just kind of stumbled into it,
That's how most people start, right? They stumble into it.
No, that's cool. And yeah, hearing you say that, it's like, I feel like I've learned this because I like to be a pretty hands-on guy, and that's a dual-edged sword, right? Like to your point, when you're investing at a distance and you're operating at a distance, like you're forced to rely on other people. And that's not always comfortable, right? Like, especially if your natural inclination is to like, no, well, I've got to do it. I'm like, well, yeah, but that's, you can never scale that, right? Like there's only one of you. And if you're like, you're wanting to respond to every issue that comes up, you're just creating yourself another job, right? And that's a lot of our audience, like everybody, it's busy working professionals, right? Like it's not people necessarily looking to create another job for themselves. So not wanting to have another hands-on thing, and that's the common gripe I feel like with landlords in general, right? That's the knock. It's what's the common saying, right? It's toilets, tenants, and just toilets and tenants, right? That was the third one. But anyways, people just don't like dealing with the day-to-day, right? The operations of it. So yeah. So if you force yourself to build those systems, and you're going to have a much better experience, which is awesome.
Exactly. And it's not just relying on other people, but really relying on the technology to take care of a lot of the routine things that otherwise people would have to take care of. So yeah, those are the systems.
That's true. And how different now, right? Like that's the kind of the current state of things, like the systems and tools, the technology pieces that we have available to us now, never before, right? Like, 20 years ago, if we're having this conversation, how much more difficult is it for you to, invest being in Jersey, 5,000 miles away from your rental property, your investment property, right? It's, the technology piece has been a massive shift from what I've been able to observe and things that we utilize now. So I think that's a huge shift, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. So kind of stepping back a little bit, just going back into kind of the motivation. Yeah, what obviously you're having success now. You're investing at a distance. You've made a shift in your business, kind of day to day income. What's your underlying why for doing that? What's your why for establishing your cash flow and not having to work maybe for every dollar? What's your driving motivation?
Yeah, I know this is going to sound cliche, but I got started working for myself as opposed to working for someone else, essentially for generational wealth, right? Like that was my drive. And I had been at mid to senior mid-level management at within my industry before. And at the end of the day, like I was busting my my ass, my butt to to do a good job and everything. And at the end of the year, you're like scraping and fighting for a 10% raise or something, right? And it just didn't make much sense. And then there was a defining moment for me. There was a time when we had like an entry to mid-level engineer position in our firm. And, it wasn't for anyone senior, but I had many people, in their mid-50s, mid to late 50s apply for the position. And, they expected a high salary because of their experience, but that was not the position that we were looking for. It was not a management position. And I literally, as I was, rejecting these applicants, I was like, this is the path I'm on with my life. If I, just keep my head down and work hard. And that scared me like nobody's business. And that's what drove me to take that leap of faith and say, hey, you know what? Like, if I try this and it fails, at least I gave it a try and I'll make something work elsewise. And so that was kind of that defining moment for me when I realized I was on that trajectory of being that guy applying for an entry level job when I'm, in my 50s. So, and that way I wanted my children, build something that can kind of go beyond just my generation and go further. So I know it's very cliche, but that literally is what drives me every day for whatever I'm working on.
No, that's awesome actually, and I feel like sometimes we need those sobering experiences, right? It's the facing those challenges or, because in that moment, like you're almost seeing a future self, right? And it's like, gosh,
Yep.
is that the life that I want for myself, right? And thankfully, you were in a position where it's like, okay, hey, I can do something different about this. I don't want necessarily that to be me. I don't want that to happen. And I feel like a lot of people end up running into that scenario and without seeing that beforehand, right? Without seeing it maybe with time enough to be able to do something about it. So kudos to you. And I think a lot of us too, a lot of our listeners and, a lot of the investors that I meet, it's like that. They want something greater, for one, because you mentioned generational wealth as well. So that's the one thing. I love that about real estate. I've been, in the industry for, a long time now. And that's always one of the greatest benefits. It's like, gosh, not only am I not having to work just a 9 to 5, or if I do, like if I put in the time, like this can be something that that I can leave to my kids, right? The skills, the assets, the wealth. So it's not just scraping for that day to day, week to week kind of paycheck to paycheck. It's like, no, look, we can set up something here that's goes beyond. And I've always loved that aspect about it. So you talked a little bit earlier about technology, and maybe some tools and some different things that we have going on right now, or maybe new things are developing or coming into the marketplace. What have you seen? Are you using anything in particular? Have you found any cool tools that help you operate your business more efficiently, or anything at a distance? Like I said, being so far away, again, it's a daunting hurdle for a lot of people to have to overcome. What have you found, besides, Google spreadsheets and, things maybe that people may be more familiar. Obviously, we're using one now, right? We're using Zoom, and this is a household name, which wasn't necessarily the case 18 months ago. But, have you found anything to be particularly effective? Have you come up with anything anything that helped you to operate your business a little bit more effectively, efficiently?
Yeah, so I'll talk big picture and then some specific tools. So especially in the short-term rental industry, there's a big problem right now in terms of the tools. It's a fragmentation of the technology, right? There's every operator operates differently, and then every tool focuses on different aspect. And so there are a ton of tools out there, each one of them great for some things and not great for other things. And something that's great for me might be the absolute worst for you. So there's no like consistent best or consistent worst. So the way I approach building out my tech stack is I identify kind of the best in class that works for me for any specific aspect of the tool set that I need. And then I semi-customize a way to integrate those tools together so that I have my own dashboard that does all the things that I needed to do for my business. And the way I got to this point is I actually had onboarded and offboarded like 15 different property management software, looking for that unicorn perfect software. And after banging your head against the wall, not once or twice, but 15 times, I decided, what, this is a fool's errand. And so that's my approach to building out the technology. So I'm not like writing code. I'm not developing my own tools. I take like well-established off-the-shelf tools, and then I kind of out of the box create ways for it to work well for me and my business. So, a couple of things that I love using. There's a property management. It's a light property management software, but it helps with a lot of the communication and the distribution. It's called Hospitable. It used to be called Smart BNB. And that's kind of like my central hub. That's my center of truth, right? On the revenue management side, I bounce back and forth between lots of different tools. But currently, my two top favorite are between Wheelhouse and Price Labs. But those are just tools, and I might touch this later on, but like you actually need to manage it. You don't just turn on the software and expect the software to auto price for you. And then I know a lot of people in the industry use Slack for communication, and I do that as well. But there's another platform called Discord. It's actually a communication tool that was built out actually for gamers. But for me, Discord gives a lot of flexibility so that in addition to my ground staff, where my properties are, I also have a small team of virtual assistants out in the Philippines. And so Discord enables me to be like constantly, on the same page with my, distributed team. So, those are some of my top favorite tools right now. And then I have my system for kind of bringing all those things together so that and other tools all come into one dashboard that my team and I can use.
Yeah, it's so cool, right? It's just awesome how like technology, like I said, this just goes back to, again, like you're running a business today versus, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's so different. Like, I mean, you're running a global operation at this point. You're on the East Coast managing VAs in the Philippines, for assets, in Hawaii, in the middle of the Pacific, right? So you're covering half the globe in your communication channels there, which is pretty awesome, right? You ever think about that? And again, those technology pieces now that we have available to us, and that are just so commonplace, right? I mean, I'm sure most people have heard of Discord, right? I didn't know that it was necessarily originally for gaming. I haven't used it extensively, but I'm definitely familiar with it. And of course, our teams, we use Slack and Asana and some different platforms like that for task management and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's so many different tools out there, available to us now, which is super cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the tools that makes this all possible. And one thing about the real estate industry in general is, generally speaking, the real estate industry is very behind in terms of adoption of technology. And so that's another aspect that I love about the short-term rental world is I get to merge my passion for real estate with my passion for technology. And so that's something that I enjoy in this space as well.
I will say that, in our experience so far, it's like, it does provide you extra leeway, right? Like this, so people, because we obviously operate, multifamily projects. So we've gone to, working with different property managers in different markets. They are familiar with certain property management softwares. You made mention of that earlier. You went through multiple, PM softwares, right? And we have two, and they're all different. They're all, and none of them are perfect. They all have like pros and cons for sure. But usually like people, let's say on a long-term rental, let's say if they're doing single family, they're doing long-term rentals, those tools are usually too robust, like let's say for the individual user, like they just don't, they're too expensive. They're too, they're too big. They're too, it's overkill for, I think, what a lot of people typically need. But, a lot of the tools that they have are really good, right? So they're just meant for larger amounts of units and all that kind of stuff. Now, what I like about the short-term side, because you mentioned a couple that I'm familiar with, I've used, Price Labs, and there's some obviously some different platforms out there that some different tools that cost a little bit of money. This is the cool thing about short-term rentals. You actually have quite a bit more additional revenue to be able to use, like versus making let's say $100 a door on a long-term rental. It's like, gosh, okay, well, how reluctant am I going to be if I've got to spend $600 annually for a tool to manage my $100 a month cash flow? Like it doesn't justify unless I'm really scaling up and I've got, a couple of dozen units or whatever to try and manage and kind of, it's like, do I really want to spend? Right. Mm-hmm. So versus with the short-term rentals, it's like, well, no, I mean, I have significant amounts of income coming in. We can play, we've got some tools, let's what works, you can kind of fast track, efficiency, I guess, in that regard, by bringing in some additional tools and whatnot. So
Yeah, and even I would say like 3 or 4 years ago, the technology landscape was much more limited, even in the short-term rental space. And so I look like there are plenty of players where I would talk to one of the established software companies, and they would kind of laugh me out of there. They'd be like, "You don't have enough. Come back when you have 50 units, right?" And that used to be much more frequent. Now, they kind of don't care. It's like, we'll help you scale. You can, join us with 1 or 2 properties, but we can also help you scale to hundreds of properties. And I think that's what's really, you can jump in at any level of the game. You don't have to get to a certain level to start jumping in with all the tools and, technologies like you were just saying. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot that you can do and save a ton of time while still creating an amazing experience for all the guests, and maintaining the properties for making sure that everything stays tip top shape and everything. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, no, it's definitely cool. Yeah, that's something too. Like, I think even you mentioned just things that weren't available even just a few years ago. I'm thinking about financing even right now, because there's a lot more financing options available for short-term rental than were even, like, I feel like even 2 years ago. And we've just had the economy, flooded with cash, and so you got a lot of people, lenders and institutions, like there's a lot of money in the system that needs to be put to work. And so, like, I'm seeing, lenders, come up with new loan products, a lot more people, a lot more adoption, I guess, on that end, and then being much more friendly to short-term rental operators. That wasn't always the case. I mean, that's for sure. Unless you were just doing traditional, an investment loan. But I mean, you can get property now, like much more easily, I think, in terms of lender options. And there's many more avenues to that. So just speaking to the adoption. Now I kind of want to circle back to you, because you mentioned at the beginning of the call, it's like your income numbers are like through the roof compared to even regular short-term rental operators, which is already like through the roof compared to a lot of long-term rentals. How are you able to kind of drive these numbers? Like, what because I'm sure people's ears perked up whenever you're like, hey, wait a minute, like 150 grand, or whatever. Or the percentages are just so far above and beyond what people can make, even going the normal short-term rental, right? Because we've got listeners that are multifamily operators, long-term rental operators, flippers, and now more and more short-term rental operators. What's the secret sauce, John? What do you?
The secret sauce,
if you can share.
Yeah, of course. I'm all about sharing, and like providing value. A lot of it is what you do. It's not about proprietary, things. So I think the key thing is, from day one, I focused on revenue management. And revenue management does not mean Price Labs or Wheelhouse. Those are tools, right? So the analogy that I use, it's like, if someone came to you and asks you, hey, do you know how to drive? You wouldn't answer by saying, I have a Porsche, right? Like, that's not an answer to the question, do you know how to drive? But in this industry, when people are like, do you do revenue management? Yes, I use Price Labs, right? And it makes no sense. Yes, it's a very important tool, and definitely helps you to increase your revenue. But again, just like driving, you have to keep your eye on the road, hand on the wheel, and depending on what's going on in the market, there's only so much that the algorithm can do, and there's manual human input that has to adjust in order to, when it's going up, you could keep riding up, right? And then when the market is slowing down, you kind of need to be kind of the first guy to start lowering your prices to maintain some occupancy. And if you're waiting for the algorithm to do it, you're always going to be too late. You're going to leave a ton of money on the table. So, I mean, that's literally the secret, right? So, so what do you do? Again, because I've been doing it, I kind of have an intuitive sense on what the response and reactions should be based on what's going on in the market. So that's what I'm doing. And, I told you at the beginning of the show, essentially, I just had my portfolio analyzed against the rest of my market for similar properties. And over the past 12 months, I brought in 2 to 3x what the top of my market has been bringing in, right? And that's the kind of difference that revenue management can make as opposed to just using the software tool. And that's something that I've been like, I sound like a broken record because I say that to people. And I think people think I say that, trying to me as like a sales pitch, trying to say, hire me for your revenue management. I do revenue management, but it's whether you hire me or you do it yourself or you hire someone else, there's a difference between actually managing it or just turning on the tool and expecting that to do what, just do its thing. So that's the secret.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that too. Like for one, it's being more hands-on for one. But two, like the pricing tools and all that kind of stuff, it's more reactive, right? They're pulling a number of different data sets, but it's always reactionary, right? They're like, they're trying to analyze versus trying to jump in front of, right? And kind of be a little bit more predictive.
Well, what's actually interesting, I want to just give a shout out here as well. But historically, these tools have been based on historic data, right? It wasn't reactive. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is what the market used to do, and here's some additional data. So this is what we expect it to do. And COVID, made that a failure for like so many people, right? And so now there are more tools that are looking at what's going on in the market up and down, the future and everything, to give you some signals about what may be going on in your market. And this is the company that did the analysis for me. There's a new startup that's doing revenue management called Buoy, BUOY.US. And they're taking a complete, it's not about historic data. It's all about future looking market trends that are happening to inform your pricing. So, anyone listening, you guys should at least check it out. And it's some powerful stuff out there.
Yeah, I just wrote it down. I'll have to look that up. Now you kind of touched too, and this is something obviously for a lot of our investors. COVID has either revealed holes in people's systems or strategy and all that kind of stuff, or even market choice. How has that impacted your business, or has it? Good, bad?
Good and bad. So, clearly it was difficult during COVID. I strung together. I was actually able to connect with a doctor staffing agency who are bringing in, kind of like administrator level and high, nurses are great too, but like these were, doctors who are helping to manage and operate some of the hospitals in Hawaii. I was fortunate enough to connect with a staffing agency. And so I was housing doctors in my units when COVID hit, which was, obviously much lower revenue, but they maintained my property well. It didn't sit empty. And I had some revenue to keep going. So that was it was a new skill set of being able to figure out how to run outside of Airbnb and VRBO. The other huge positive that I've seen is because previously everything was going so smoothly and easily, I had a ton of waste in my operations, right? Things were just kind of, I could spend more for this. Oh, I could spend a little bit more for that. And it really made me go through my entire operation and restructure the whole thing. And so right now, I have a fine-tuned machine, both in terms of my technology, my team, my cleaners. And it really took something of that magnitude for me to take the time to identify all the waste in my processes and really strip it down to what I really need. And so for that, I'm actually grateful for the fact that I went through the process. I wouldn't want to go through it again, don't get me wrong, but it really helped me to really, I think, supercharge my business. Less expenses, higher revenue, right? That's what we want.
Yeah, no. And honestly, I like that, I've seen for some people, it's like, okay, some businesses, right? Like, okay, that pressure, the changes in the market, the changes in the industry, now's the time, that drives innovation. right? Like this is the time where we see technology breakthrough. We see, breakthroughs, and just like how you said, right? Like, and I feel like a lot of times that's from the vantage point that you're looking at it with too, right? Because some people are just like, okay, especially here in Hawaii, right? Like, I mean, there's businesses that close down here, they'll never reopen. And I know that's true for, different places around the country. But a destination location like Hawaii where, hey, a lot of people didn't travel, right? Like the primary, one of the primary driving economic factors in Hawaii is tourism. Well, what happens when you shut off, the planes, right? And you close the hotels, right? It's like, okay, well, and even now, right, we've reopened, but then there's kind of this yo-yo effect where it's okay, well, it's reopening, but it's closed down, right? So you probably had some recent, maybe bumps in your operations too, just because of what's happening on a local level. But yeah, no, I think I've seen that. I experienced that firsthand, with the financial meltdown back in, 08. I was like, okay, well, for me during that time, I hadn't, I was pretty early on in my real estate career. I didn't, learn to take advantage of, I didn't look to see, okay, well, how can I improve? Like what new opportunities does this downturn in the market create?
Mm-hmm.
Like what new skills and tools can you develop, to be better, right? Because every downturn like that creates new opportunities. And so if you don't have that vision, that mindset to be able to look for that, you're going to miss out. So that failure again, and I was in the same boat, right? I would not want to have relived that because that was a tough time. But it made me very cognizant of the fact, look, we're going to have another cycle. And the next time we go through this, I want to be in a position where we can take advantage. And I am looking with that right mindset, with that right vision to say, okay, no, like fortunes are going to be made during this time. Like I know it's going to be a rough season for a lot of people, but I don't want to be that, and that's not going to be me again. And so, yeah, we've had explosive growth during this season. So, key takeaway for me was like, yeah, you got to now's the time, right? Like, and it sounds like you were able to take advantage of that as well. And so now on the backside of that, the people that benefit are the people that were able to stay nimble, make changes, identify opportunities, identify deficiencies. Let's increase operational efficiencies. How can we make this a lean, mean, operating machine, right?
Exactly.
And it sounds like that's what you've done.
And then, like, just like you, like it builds out your tool set, right? Like now I'm like, you know what, if something like this happens, I'm not going to freak out like I did last time, right? Like it's not going to be pretty, but okay, like I can figure out a game plan. And, that kind of confidence is actually also pretty key right now. So, yeah. And I want to touch on, kind of speaking of like innovation that comes out of this, right? So I told you that I got very, lean and got rid of a lot of inefficiencies. One of that was how I started building out. I told you, I do my own dashboard, my customized way of integrating.
Mm-hmm.
That came out of COVID because I needed to cut a lot of software, but I still needed some operational efficiency, right? And that's when I realized, oh, like, wow, I can do this. I can make that work, right? And so that kind of, I always was able to do it, but this forced my hand to do it. And now it's actually a service offering that I provide for not just my business, but for other people's businesses, right? So being nimble and taking your skill set and seeing how you can apply it, in the new world order. So yeah, that's been, I learned a lot through COVID. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. The crazy thing is, and I've learned a little bit of this from following, things in the crypto space now too, right? It's like people talk about diamond hands and, all this kind of stuff. And I know you're into crypto too, right? So it's like, well, this is the time where, it shakes things out from people with weak hands, right? And it's like, okay, opportunities, properties, that kind of stuff. And the people that have that focus to be able to, all right, no, we're going to make this better. We're not only are we going to make it through, we're going to be better off because of it. And so now we're in a position of strong hands, right? And so, that's been huge. So yeah, looking forward to us. Yeah, and you're right. You get that confidence too. Okay, well now my tools are tested, they're true. I know how we can. We've made the improvements, and now moving forward, we're going to be better off, and we'll be in a position where we can take advantage of additional opportunities as they come up. Yeah, super cool. Well, anything specific you're working on? I know you mentioned having this dashboard. If not, what we can kind of do is well, actually, I do have one more question for you. So, I mean, I know that the short terms have been, great for you, or is that the final stop, right? Is this the final stop in your kind of investment journey? It's like, oh, we're just going to continue to stack short-term rentals and, retire on a beach. And well, I guess you could come to visit your properties in Hawaii, but it could be somewhere else. I don't know. Or you wanted to do anything different, any new trend, any new trajectories?
Well, let's see. So the answer is no, right? It's not that I want to leave the space, but like there's always going to be different things and different opportunities. So it's not like, this is the final stop. One thing that I'm, kind of toying with the idea of is, kind of moving on to like a boutique hotel type of property, right? I have all the skill set for running hospitality. And so that's one way that I look at it. The other thing that I'm doing, which gets to kind of the closeout that you were asking what I'm working on, is I've taken my operational experience. And so, this technology service that I've created is actually a company in and of itself that is not just for my own operations, but can benefit a lot of other operators, right? And so I'm actually trying to work towards becoming somewhat of like a service provider / startup in the industry. So looking at it from a different point of view than just the owner, operator, manager, right? So that's what I'm working on right now, is building that out. Had some amazing conversations at the VRMA. It's the Vacation Rental Managers Association. There was a conference, and some crazy stuff have come out of my meetings there. And I think within the next couple of weeks, there's going to be some exciting partnerships and things that that I think I'm going to be a part of, which is blows my mind that a little guy who wanted a few $100,000 to a few $1,000 cash flow in the beginning is now kind of entrenching myself inside this industry. Just it kind of blows my mind. So that's where I'm kind of focusing my efforts on at this point.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Hey, we'll have to have you back on, I think, in the future to kind of see maybe where those ventures are going. Maybe just kind of a review, I guess, of maybe different markets too, because there's so many different things that we can talk about in terms of, let's say, market analysis and underwriting and all that kind of stuff, right? We get much more technical. So yeah, I'm sure we'll have to have you back on at some point to see, kind of pick your brain about that, kind of check progress in on some of that.
And I would love to come back. So thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, it's every part of every one of our shows. We do kind of a fire round where we're just answering just a few different questions, and we just do simple answers. And yeah, you ready? It's not scary at all. It's all right. John? What is the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad Poor Dad? It's kind of the real estate Bible, I think, for a lot of people. So
recently, I read. It's not real estate specific, but I read a book called The Lean Startup, and it really helped change my mindset in terms of how to approach, exploring new ventures. And so that's kind of top of my mind right now.
Cool. The Lean Startup. Okay. I'll have to look that up. All right. What is your superpower?
I've been told that one of my superpowers is actually making connections with a lot of people, kind of a broad network of industry professionals. But that's what I've been told. I actually think my superpower is kind of, again, being able to take things that are off the shelf and find like new and innovative ways to use those things, whether it's physical things or technology things.
Very cool. Sounds like an integrator, right? Like the
Yep. That's
what is the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career?
Never make the same mistake twice. Learn from your mistakes and kind of keep those mistakes in the back of your mind always, so that when you see that same pattern happening, that you kind of alert yourself and you don't make that same mistake. And that's kind of what I'm doing in the short-term rental industry right now.
No, that's great. And it's key advice. And yeah, it's something that probably, all of us need to be aware of, right? It's like, okay, we don't like those results that you're getting. You got to change something up. So don't keep doing the same things over and over and over. Definition of insanity, right? So for the busy working professional, is working towards trying to attain financial freedom, what advice do you have to them?
I think, take it one step at a time, right? Like you build your skill set by doing a little bit and a little bit and a little bit at a time. And again, everything sounds cliche from what I'm saying, but if you do that for 30 days, 30 days later, you have 30 more, 30 new skill sets or 30 new things that you've done, right? And it could be tiny, tiny little things every day, but like just a little bit every day, and you'll be like amazed what you accomplish at the end of the year. And that's kind of how I'm approaching it now. I'm not looking to like create crazy things. It's just do a little bit, and then at the end of the year, I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, what is it? Like just focus every day, right? Making that 1% improvement, right? Like every day. It doesn't see it seems minuscule in the moment, but it's massive, like long term, like the gains that you'll have, right?
And I know all my answers are like very cliche, so I'm sorry, but like,
no, no, it's good stuff. And like I said, a lot of times people need to hear it, right? And so, and that's always one of the things. It's gosh, you got to surround yourself, even if it's virtually like this. Surround yourself with people who want to be better, because I've found a lot of times people like to keep themselves in an echo chamber, or people who are at their same level, and it's like, all right, well, no, you want to improve, right? We want that at least at 1% improvement. So no, we need those reminders, like, and that's a good reminder to me, today, every day. So how can our audience get in touch with you if they want to reach out? They're want to pick your brain about short-term rental stuff, or any kind of new projects going on, or they just want to connect. How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is email. It's john.on@gettechtape.com. john@gettechtape.com. And I'm pretty responsive and reach out. And if there's a way I can help, I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, John, for hopping on with me. And like I said, I'd love to have you back on in the future, and we can dive a little bit deeper into maybe some different things that you got going on, or projects that you're working on at that time.
Awesome. I'd love to be back. And I'm happy to have conversations all the time. So thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, John.
Thanks, Steve.
If you're interested in investing with us, go to tricityequity.com to learn more. To connect with like-minded investors, join our Facebook group, Honolulu Multifamily, and more. If you found value in our podcast today with John and talking about short-term rentals, please subscribe to the podcast. We're going to be doing more episodes with different people in different industries, of course, real estate related, but cash flow related. So make sure you're sharing the podcast. If you're not just subscribed already, make sure that you're subscribing to the channel. Give us a review also on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you know anybody else who might resonate with today's podcast, please share the episode with them. We're also continuing to promote. We're super excited. The planning gets better and better every day, and what's going to be happening for our conference next year. So make sure you're earmarking on your calendar July 21st to the 24th for 2022 here in Hawaii, out of the Four Seasons, the Hawaii Millionaire Mindset Conference. Make sure that you're making plans. Go check out the link. It'll be in the show notes, but you can check it out now, the millionairemindsetblueprint.com for the best pricing. It'll have you all the details about how you can come out and connect with like-minded individuals, learn how to be better. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we will talk to you guys next time. Aloha.